All right, greetings from the wood shop. In this video, I'm going to show you a couple tricks with the Domino DF 700. I'm going to be using the Seneca accessory plate here, as well as a smaller cutter, an 8mm cutter. But essentially what I'm playing with today is making drawers. And if you see these pictures here, these dominoes are cut really close to the top of this piece. You may be wondering, well, how do you do that with the larger machine versus the DF 500? And I'll show you. The other trick I'm going to show you is how to adjust how far this machine will plunge less than its factory settings. So this will make sense in a second, but the minimum setting is 15mm is what this machine will plunge. This maple high quality plywood that I got from my cabinet shop, it sits at 15.62mm. So if I just set the domino to its minimum setting and I plunge through this, it's gonna go right through like this. But as you can see in this, I've got it to stop short. And I will show you how I stopped it short. To back up real quick, what I'm doing these drawers for is my kitchen remodel, and I'm going to show you a little clip here of my existing cabinets that I'm trying to copy, and you can see they have some basic drawers with some dovetails. I owned a dovetail jig in the past. It just wasn't my gig. Like I bought the Lee, the really nice one. I ended up selling it. It wasn't my jam. But here's the deal. What I liked was I like building this construction, and I'm gonna leave the plywood exposed and finish it with some oil. I have a test piece that looks pretty good, but I ended up not liking the dominoes plunging forward. So I'm gonna show you the setup real quick, and I'm also gonna show you what makes this machine shine. And so it's the setup pins if you're not familiar with those. Here. What this Seneca plate does is essentially tricks the reference point to where we're not referencing off the fence, we're referencing now off this machined piece of aluminum. So what this Seneca plate allows you to do is get your cutter much closer to your fence, therefore allowing you to do these shallow dominoes. This is the standard setup that I'm using. So what I have a reference 90 here that's screwed into my Polk workbench. And then what I'm using is the setup pins to reference off of either side of the material. But if I just put the machine right up to this, it's going to plunge too deep because we said the minimum setting is 15mm. So what I did is I glued an auxiliary fence here, and what this does is I moved the plate forward 1/16 of an inch. So when I set the machine right here, and this is a little hard to film and show you at the same time, but when I set this here, if you can look way down in that crack, there's 1/16 of an inch shallow to where, see, the machine is referencing up off the top here. What that allows me to do is cut a shallow domino hole. Now, depending on the thickness of your material, you could change this fence reference as much as you wanted, and you could plunge even thinner material than this. So, I've done a box. There's one box that I already have glued up there in the back as a test. It's working well. I'm going to show you the pin setup right now and explain why that's so great. All right, so one amazing feature of this domino are these reference pins. And you'll see me in the video when I start to cut, I'm actually going pretty fast and I'm not using any pencil marks or anything to line up because basically these pins are going to do my alignment for me. So since I have a groove in the piece for a runner, I'm going to use this offset pin on this side, and I'm going to use this offset pin on this side. And what that ends up producing is a hole that is close to the edge here, and then one that is just off of the edge here because I don't want it to be in my runner. That setup trick alone for this machine is incredible. So I really like the pins. Let's get to cutting some and we'll show you how we do it. So what I'm doing to try to speed up the process is I'm doing all this side of the board to keep those 2 pins deployed, and then I'll flip the board the other way, deploy the opposite pins, and then I can bang out the other side. All right, so basically what you saw there is in just a matter of less than a minute, we have all of the tenons cut there, and then we'll flip the pins to the other configuration and do that side as well. All right, so now with the tenon inserted, we need to get the balance of how much is hanging out. So right now, when I measure that, it sits at 35.56. So what I do is I adjust the depth of my machine over here to 35. That's not giving me a ton of wiggle room here, but I don't want it to be too loose. So what I can do is I can always take these tenons over to the edge sander and nip off a little bit if it's getting a little tight. But basically we're going to use the same pin orientation that we used before to now cut the other face of this, and we'll see if we got it right. All right, well, this one was not done correct. As you can see, the pins and the depth were right, but that groove down the center, that's the inside of my drawer. And for these type of 90 joints, we always want to be referencing on the outside. So afterwards, I could tell the alignment was a little bit off, figured the problem out, and then I flipped the future boards over. We had the outside face, and everything worked out just fine. All right, so now that we have our 2 pieces here, let's take a look at the joint tightness. Look at that. So the cool thing about the pins, like I talked about, absolute dead on reference. This is flush. It makes building these so easy. I know. All right, moving over to plugging the drawer bottom holes. I've cut some 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch alder strips, and basically I'm going to shove this down here and cut it off with the flush saw. But what I put in the bottom is a little bit of this super fast thin star bond, but it's important not to get it around the top because this end grain plywood will suck it up, and then it's hard to sand it out later and still keep the drawer flush. So what you'll see me do is stick the nozzle down in the bottom, put a little circular dab, put this piece in, and then cut it off with the flush saw. All right, so here's what the side of the plywood looks like with the Odie's oil and the wood plug installed. I think it looks really good. I like the kind of look I was going for. Was I wasn't trying to completely hide that alder plug, but I wanted the color to kind of blend a little bit with the Odie's oil. And one thing to remember is that we are looking at the side of this box. So from the front, it looks just like my other pre-finished maple drawers. It has matching edge banding. It looks really clean. It's only when you go to the side that instead of seeing that dovetail that we looked at earlier, you have this exposed maple joint. And the more I look at it from the side, I kind of like it. You know, most people probably aren't gonna notice that if they're not a woodworker, if they're not looking. But like I said earlier, with this higher quality plywood and a little oil, I think it looks kind of cool. All right, in closing, I hope you like this video. Spoiler alert, if you've been watching my channel, I absolutely love Festool equipment. In my opinion, there is no other machine that does what this does. Obviously, I'm using it for small drawer joinery, which is not what I bought it for. I do a ton of live edge and slab. I join big slabs together. I do waterfall tables, big heavy doors. That is what I bought this for, but you can see it does all kinds of different stuff. Just this pin technology alone is amazing. This machine is fantastic. I would recommend it to anybody. It's well built. Like I said, Seneca is one company that is doing all kinds of different stuff to make this more versatile. So if you're on the fence with any domino, the big one or the little one, whichever one fits your need, I would definitely say go for it. I don't think you're going to regret it. So